Picture this. The year is 1250 AD, and you are standing in the bustling market city of Samarkand, a jewel on the legendary Silk Road. The air is thick with the scent of spices, the chatter of merchants, and the distant call of muezzins. Amidst the vibrant tapestry of goods and people, you notice something unusual. A young woman, perhaps no older than 17, is haggling fiercely with a merchant over a bolt of shimmering silk. Her face is unveiled, a rare sight for a woman of her apparent status, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, miss nothing. This is Aisha, the daughter of a prominent Persian merchant, and her story is one of unprecedented ambition and a daring defiance of the rigid gender roles of her time. In an era when women of her class were expected to remain cloistered, managing the household and raising children, Aisha harbored dreams far beyond the domestic sphere. Her father, a visionary who had amassed a vast fortune through trade, recognized a spark of brilliance in his daughter that he hadn't seen in his sons. He had defied tradition by educating her alongside her brothers, teaching her mathematics, languages, and the intricate art of negotiation. Unbeknownst to the other merchants, Aisha was not merely haggling for silk. She was assessing the market, identifying new trade routes, and silently preparing to step into a world that was strictly forbidden to her. The Silk Road was a man's world, a dangerous network of trade, diplomacy, and sometimes violence. But Aisha was about to prove that a woman, armed with intellect and unwavering courage, could navigate its treacherous currents and reshape her destiny. Aisha's defiance wasn't just in her presence in the market. It was in the silent education she pursued. Her father, sensing her extraordinary intellect, had secretly arranged for her to study with a reclusive scholar known only as Master Khalil. This scene unfolds in the quiet, candlelit study of Master Khalil, tucked away in a hidden corner of Samarkand. The air is heavy with the scent of aged parchment and incense. Aisha, no longer the shrewd merchant but a diligent student, sits cross-legged on a cushion, poring over ancient texts written in Arabic, Persian, and even some obscure Sanskrit scripts. Master Khalil, a wizened old man with kind eyes and a long white beard, watches her with a mixture of pride and concern. He teaches her not just mathematics and astronomy, but also the art of cryptography, the principles of international law, and the subtle nuances of political negotiation, subjects considered utterly inappropriate for a woman. Aisha absorbs it all with an insatiable hunger, her mind a sponge for knowledge that would empower her beyond the confines of her society. Her clandestine education was a dangerous gamble. If discovered, she and her father could face severe repercussions, from social ostracization to much harsher penalties for violating established norms. But Aisha knew that knowledge was her only weapon in a world that sought to confine her, and she wielded it with quiet determination, preparing for a future that no one, not even her forward-thinking father, could fully envision. Aisha's quiet preparation was about to be put to the ultimate test. News of her father's extraordinary commercial successes, often subtly aided by Aisha's insights, reached the ears of the Caliph of Baghdad, a man known for his keen interest in talent, regardless of its source. This scene takes place in the opulent yet tense reception hall of the Caliph's palace in Baghdad. Aisha, now 19, stands before the Caliph, her face veiled as custom dictated, but her posture radiating a quiet strength. Her father stands respectfully beside her, his pride barely concealed beneath a veneer of decorum. The Caliph, a powerful and imposing figure, asks a series of probing questions about the merchant's trade strategies, and it is Aisha, through her father, who provides the surprisingly astute and detailed answers. The Caliph's advisors, a group of stern-faced male courtiers, exchange uneasy glances. Never before had a woman, especially one so young, been so directly involved in matters of state or commerce in the Caliph's presence. The Caliph, however, was intrigued, not offended. He recognized a mind of exceptional caliber and, in a groundbreaking move that would send ripples throughout the Islamic world, offered Aisha's father a position as a chief economic advisor, with the unspoken understanding that Aisha would be the true brain behind the advice. It was a perilous offer, a double-edged sword that could bring immense power or utter ruin. But for Aisha, it was the first crack in the rigid walls that confined her sex, a chance to finally apply her forbidden knowledge on a grand scale. Aisha's presence in the palace, albeit veiled and indirect, did not go unnoticed, particularly within the confines of the Caliph's harem. This scene takes place in the lush, secluded gardens of the harem, a world of intricate beauty and stifling limitations. Aisha, now officially part of her father's retinue and granted limited access, finds herself an anomaly. The other women of the harem, concubines, wives, and female attendants, initially view her with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and veiled resentment. They are accustomed to a life defined by their beauty, their lineage, and their ability to produce male heirs. Aisha, with her direct manner and her evident intellectual pursuits, challenges their understanding of a woman's place. Whispers follow her, questions about her unusual education, her unveiled presence in certain intellectual discussions, and the Caliph's unusual favor. Some women, particularly the elder wives, see her as a dangerous disruption to the established order. Others, younger and more rebellious, look to her with a nascent sense of admiration and hope. Aisha navigates this complex social landscape with grace and diplomacy. She understands that gaining the trust of these women, and not just the men in power, is crucial for her long-term survival and influence. She begins to subtly share her knowledge, explaining complex ideas in simple terms, or quietly offering advice on managing household finances, slowly chipping away at their prejudices and building unexpected alliances within the gilded cage of the harem. Aisha's intellect soon became indispensable to the Caliph, especially in a time of growing tension with the Mamluk Sultanate to the west. This scene takes place during a critical diplomatic meeting in the Caliph's war room, a heavily guarded chamber filled with maps, military strategists, and stern-faced advisors. Aisha, still officially an advisor to her father, is present, her veiled presence now a familiar, if still somewhat unsettling, sight. Messengers arrive with alarming dispatches. The Mamluks are demanding exorbitant tributes and threatening to halt vital trade routes. The Caliph's male advisors offer traditional military solutions, reinforcing garrisons, preparing for skirmishes. But Aisha, through her father, proposes a radical alternative. A detailed plan for economic warfare and strategic alliances, disrupting Mamluk supply lines and forging new trade agreements with distant allies. Her strategy is complex, involving intricate knowledge of diverse markets, cultural nuances, and long-term economic forecasting and knowledge she acquired through her clandestine education and market observations. The male advisors are initially skeptical, even scornful, but the Caliph, remembering her past successes, listens intently. He sees the wisdom in her unconventional approach, a path that avoids direct military conflict while still asserting power. Aisha, though silent and veiled, is effectively orchestrating a geopolitical chess game, her mind calculating moves far beyond the comprehension of most of the men in the room. This moment marks her transition from economic consultant to an unacknowledged but pivotal strategic mind within the Caliphate. The success of Aisha's diplomatic and economic strategies against the Mamluks was undeniable. Trade continued, alliances strengthened, and the Caliphate avoided a costly war. In gratitude, and perhaps as a subtle challenge to tradition, the Caliph decreed a special ceremony in the Grand Court. This scene takes place during this lavish ceremony, a celebration of the Caliphate's diplomatic triumph. Aisha, now 21, stands before the assembled court, no longer hidden behind her father. The Caliph himself invites her to step forward, and in a moment that sent gasps through the court, he extends his hand to her. With quiet dignity, Aisha reaches up and slowly, deliberately, removes her veil. Her face, intelligent and composed, is revealed to the astonished gaze of the courtiers, many of whom have never seen her uncovered before. A ripple of whispers, a mixture of awe and shock, spreads through the hall. This act was more than a gesture of honor. It was a profound symbolic unveiling of her power and influence. It declared, unequivocally, that a woman, through her intellect and strategic acumen, had earned her place at the highest echelons of power. The conservative elements of the court were aghast, seeing it as an affront to deeply ingrained traditions. But the Caliph's decree and Aisha's dignified demeanor silenced open dissent. In that moment, Aisha was no longer just the merchant's daughter or the hidden advisor. She was a visible, powerful figure in her own right, a testament to her unwavering courage and the Caliph's progressive vision. With her newfound public recognition, Aisha began to challenge the traditional male-dominated institutions of knowledge. This scene takes place in the Caliph's famed House of Wisdom, a vibrant intellectual center in Baghdad. Aisha, now a recognized figure, is seated amongst the most esteemed scholars, philosophers, and scientists of the age, all men. They are engaged in a heated debate about a complex astronomical problem, a new interpretation of ancient Greek texts, or a critical flaw in a widely accepted mathematical theory. Initially, some of the male scholars dismiss her presence, murmuring about women's intuition or their fragile minds. But Aisha, calmly and methodically, interjects, presenting a precise argument, citing obscure references, and offering a solution that had eluded them. Her logic is unassailable, her knowledge profound. Slowly, grudgingly at first, the male scholars begin to acknowledge her intellect. Their expressions shift from skepticism to surprise, then to respect. She doesn't seek to dominate but to contribute, to elevate the discourse with her unique perspective and rigorous reasoning. This scene isn't about one dramatic moment of triumph but a series of subtle victories, as Aisha consistently proves her intellectual prowess, earning her place at the very pinnacle of the Caliphate's intellectual elite. Her presence in the House of Wisdom was a quiet revolution, demonstrating that knowledge knew no gender, and that true wisdom could emerge from unexpected sources. Aisha's rising influence, however, was not universally welcomed. The old guard, accustomed to their power and privilege, saw her as a dangerous threat. This scene takes place in a dimly lit, secret chamber within the palace, where a cabal of disgruntled viziers and military commanders plot her downfall. Their faces are contorted with resentment and fear. They speak in hushed, venomous tones about the woman who has usurped their positions, who defies tradition, and who holds too much sway over the Caliph. They devise a plan to discredit her, to fabricate evidence of treason or corruption, or perhaps even to arrange an accident. One particularly conniving vizier suggests spreading rumors that her knowledge comes from sorcery, an accusation that could easily turn the superstitious populace against her. The air is thick with conspiracy and malice. They fear not just her power, but what her rise represents, the erosion of their long-held patriarchal norms. They believe that by removing Aisha, they can restore the natural order of things. Unbeknownst to them, one of Aisha's loyal allies from the harem, a clever attendant she had befriended, overhears parts of their sinister conversation. This loyalist, risking her own life, immediately seeks to warn Aisha. The scene ends with Aisha receiving the whispered warning, her face, though calm, revealing a flicker of concern. She knew that her path was fraught with danger, and now, the true battle for her survival, and for the future of women in power, was about to begin. The conspirators struck. Aisha found herself accused of grave crimes against the Caliphate, espionage, corruption, and even witchcraft. This scene takes place in the Caliph's Grand Tribunal, a vast hall where justice was dispensed. Aisha stands before the Caliph and a panel of stern judges, her head once again covered, but her bearing unwavering. The accusers, the very viziers who plotted against her, present their fabricated evidence, a meticulously woven web of lies and half-truths. The court is packed, buzzing with nervous anticipation. Many expect her to crumble, to plead for mercy. But Aisha, instead, begins to systematically dismantle each accusation. She uses her knowledge of law, her understanding of the court's procedures, and her sharp intellect to expose the inconsistencies in their testimonies and the falsity of their documents. She reveals the deep-seated prejudices of her accusers, subtly turning their misogyny against them. Her voice, though calm, carries authority and conviction. The Caliph, who has observed her closely for years, watches intently, his expression unreadable. The male judges, initially inclined to side with their peers, find themselves unable to ignore the logical force of her defense. The tide slowly begins to turn. This is not just a trial of Aisha. It is a trial of tradition versus progress, of prejudice versus truth. Aisha is fighting not just for her life, but for the principle that intellect and merit should supersede gender. Aisha was acquitted. The conspirators were disgraced, some exiled, others stripped of their power. This final scene takes place years later, in the twilight of Aisha's life, now an esteemed and revered figure within the caliphate. She is an elder stateswoman, her face lined with wisdom and experience, but her eyes still holding their characteristic fire. She sits in a tranquil garden, surrounded not by male courtiers, but by a group of young women, eager students who hang on her every word. These are the daughters of the caliph's court, and even some from merchant families, inspired by Aisha's journey. She is teaching them, just as Master Khalil taught her, but now openly and without fear. She recounts her struggles, her triumphs, and the lessons she learned about power, prejudice, and perseverance. Her legacy is evident not just in her continued influence in the caliphate's affairs, but in the growing number of women who are now pursuing education, entering commerce, and even quietly advising male relatives in positions of power. She has opened a door that was once firmly shut, a door to opportunities for women that were previously unimaginable. Her story became a legend, whispered from mother to daughter, a testament to the fact that one woman, with extraordinary courage and intellect, could challenge the deepest societal norms and forge a new path, not just for herself, but for generations to come. Aisha's life stands as a beacon, reminding us that true history is not just about the grand narratives of empires, but the individual acts of defiance that reshape the world, one courageous step at a time.